All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, first let me say this. You do not have to like Andrew Yang to be into this radar. Some of you might love him, some of you might hate him, some of you might be just kind of like meh with him. But that is actually irrelevant to what I want to lay out for you here today. This is a case study of how the media sets out to destroy someone they do not like, and Andrew Yang happens to be the subject. So what inspired me was the latest attack on Yang, originally headlined by Politico, Yang under fire for appearance in video suggesting violence against women. Now, if you read that headline, and only the headline, as many people do, what would you think that Yang had done? It certainly sounds like Yang had appeared in a video and that he himself had suggested committing violence against women. That was an interpretation so clear and so wrong, the Politico actually eventually changed the headline. Here's what truly happened in Politico's own words. Andrew Yang faced an onslaught of criticism on Thursday after a video circulated of the leading mayoral candidate laughing when asked if he choked bitches. In the video, someone asked the mayoral frontrunner whether a man, while he is effing bitches, can he keep his Timbs on, a reference to Timberland boots. Yang said, "I think it's purely up to your partner." The man continued by asking Yang whether he chokes bitches, to which Yang laughed and backed away, gesturing with his hand that the conversation was over. Now look, could Andrew have handled the situation better? Of course. But in no way did he suggest violence against women, and in fact, he immediately ended the conversation when any sort of violence was suggested. And explaining his laughter, he said, "You're in a posture when you're trying to be friendly to someone, and then you're shocked and surprised that all of a sudden it goes in that direction. So I reacted to end the interaction as quickly as possible." And about this supposed onslaught of criticism that he's receiving, according to Politico, they really make it sound like there was some sort of huge grassroots backlash to the video. But then, 100% of the supposedly outraged people Politico quotes are either his political opponents or endorsers and advocates for his political opponents. In other words, it's a purely media-invented controversy. Maya Wiley, one of his opponents, is quoted making an insane comparison between Andrew Yang and Donald Trump, saying, "We have seen 4 years of a president who joked about sexually assaulting women and still got elected. I guess since she became famous feeding the resistance crowd on MSNBC, relating everything back to Trump is her stock in trade." But this is just the latest effort to smear Yang. Let's briefly revisit history, shall we? Now, when Yang first started gaining a following in his presidential campaign, they used what was frankly a more effective tactic, the one they tried to use with Bernie when he was first on the presidential scene back in 2015. They just ignored him. He was left off of graphics, barely asked questions at debates, had his mic cut, and was just rendered invisible by the legacy press. It really kind of worked, though. He wasn't able to grow outside of his enthusiastic young following into the mainstream Democratic base, and that doomed his presidential chances because those who were looking for a serious candidate who could beat Trump were never given the chance to see Andrew in that light. And before you tell me about his lack of experience, please tell me why Beto and Pete were given the serious candidate treatment and continue to be treated as very serious people. Ignoring Yang, though, it wasn't an option any longer in his mayoral campaign, given that he was polling at the top of the field. So they switched to smearing him. Now listen, there are entirely legitimate criticisms to make of Yang, and some reporters are looking into them. But others, they seem to be just throwing whatever they can against the wall to see if it sticks. Here's what it looks like. At the beginning of his mayoral campaign, before the desperation started to set in from his rivals in the political press, the coverage was still critical, but was more in the realm of fair critiques and questions. What's his connection to New York City? Why did he leave the city during the pandemic? Does he know what a bodega is? Why had he never voted before for mayor? Now, maybe you care about these things and maybe you don't, but they were reasonable questions to be explored with regards to a newbie to New York politics. When Kyle Kulinski and I interviewed Andrew recently, we pressed him pretty hard on healthcare and very hard on BDS and other policy topics, so I'm not at all advocating for a softball approach. But when Yang continued riding high in the polls, the attacks sharpened and they became much more dishonest. Rather than focusing on anything approaching qualifications and policy, they went all in on the most potent and brutal charges that you could level at someone, that they're racist, that they're sexist, that they're bigots. First, there was this piece suggesting maybe Yang was alt-right curious. This one was all guilt by association based on Yang's appearances with Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, and Joe Rogan, who's somehow pegged as right even though he voted for Bernie. They even amusingly suggest that Yang's views are, quote, antithetical to today's current Democratic Party and that, quote, New York City Democratic politics demand a different script. I guess the voters of that city did not get the memo about the different script that they're supposed to be demanding. Next, there was a piece suggesting Andrew Yang was somehow anti-Asian. The piece criticizes him for not being the first candidate to condemn the Georgia massage parlor shootings, and has a series of suggestive quotes from Asian American activists that maybe he isn't doing his Asian identity in the right way. Meanwhile, every poll shows Yang atop the field among Asian American New Yorkers. And that, of course, brings me back to this latest piece trying very hard to make it seem like Andrew Yang supports violence against women. I am sure his wife, who has spoken movingly and painfully about her own rape at the hands of a doctor, would be surprised to learn that her supportive husband was really such a monster. The good news is so far these smears are falling flat. In fact, on the same day the Yang suggests violence piece dropped, a new poll found him expanding his lead and leading in every single demographic group to include women. And whether you love him or whether you hate him, I think you should be encouraged by that. Because whether he wins or he loses, it should be on the merits, not because people bought into some smear. And by the way, it's not clear to me whether Yang is doing well in spite of the media's sabotage or potentially because of it. I could certainly see how people could want to vote for him just as a giant FU. So if you do hate Andrew Yang for his policy or other legitimate reasons, you should also hate the media's approach here because it certainly isn't working to bring him down. Bottom line, may the best man or woman win, and may the media utterly fail in their attempts to manufacture consent. Sagar, we see the same pattern over and over again. You can see it with Bernie. You can see it with Trump. Again, whether you like these candidates or you hate them, Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, same exact thing. We're just not going to pay attention to them. Then once we have to, we're going to smear them. We're going to dismiss them. And then we'll see where it goes from there. And I do think it's encouraging that right now, I just saw another headline this morning of a poll of seniors in New York City has Yang leading among voters over the age of 50 as well. Every single poll has showed that this tactic hasn't worked, which is why I think they keep getting increasingly desperate and just reprinting press releases from his political opponents, basically.
You also know how this would be handled. If it was Maya Wiley or Kamala Harris or any of these other people, but like, man harasses Kamala in disgusting misogyny attack. Now they're like, oh, well, look, let me tell you something. And we've had to deal, not even close to what Yang has. People are weird. Sometimes they come up to you and they say weird stuff whenever you're a public figure or not. You're usually just like, dude, like, leave me alone. You know, like, that's not, and then he sees a camera and he's just like, all right, like, okay, haha, you know, you do the nervous laugh type thing. Also, it's New York. Like, there are weirdos everywhere. You just walk away. That's it. Well, I mean, that's what this entire interaction was about. But, oh, you got to say condones violence.
Suggesting violence against women.
Let me go stick a camera and say vulgar stuff in front of this reporter, and we're going to see how quickly she's, something like that. And guess that's a natural human reaction.
Yes.
And that is exactly what would have happened. They would have spun it the other way if it was anybody else. All of that out of the way, it's just part of a general pattern in order to try and destroy him. And I can just, only speaking anecdotally, one of the things that I have seen is that amongst people who don't pay that much attention to politics, one of the reasons they like Yang is because, like, yeah, he's a nice guy. He's just a happy guy. They're like, yeah, you know, New York, it's been pretty grim the last year. It was a pretty tough year. Everybody was inside. And he just seems to have the type of energy that I want to see in the city. That's actually how most people think about politics.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with it. As you said, you want to ask questions about bodegas or why you left the city or the comment about, like, imagine, you know, having to raise kids or whatever. Fine. I think there's reasonable answers to all of those questions. How are you going to make the trash, situation run? What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about the subway?
Reopening, all that stuff.
School, yeah.
Totally.
Great question. I would love to, and if Maya Wiley and Andrew Yang want to come here and talk about that, they're welcome any day of the week. But something tells me Maya Wiley doesn't want to talk about that. Or any of these other people. They want to attack him and basically use the media as their printing ground whenever it comes to this. And then the New York City press is the same way. They're totally in the pockets of these people. They're like, because they know them. They're just been around for a long time. You know, the people who are his opponents have been leaking stories to them for 30 years, 40 years.
Right.
And so they're like, yeah, you know, it's a natural thing. They're like, Yang, who the hell is this guy? Who does he think he is?
I think
he's got to come through us before he gets to the top.
I think that's it too.
Yeah.
And I actually actually, I asked him a little bit about that. And that's basically his view as well. And I don't want to characterize his comments. I'll just, say that this is my impression, that the media didn't make him, right? In fact,
he made him.
And in fact, that first piece where they suggest, he's like maybe sort of alt-rightish, or he's like on the right, he's not really a Democrat. This is antithetical to the current Democratic Party, even as Democrats in a primary are set to vote for a potentially elected mayor of New York. But he was forced to those outlets because mainstream media wouldn't say a damn thing about him,
or put
let
the
alone
wrong image up for his face.
Right.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Or let alone even have him on their programs to talk about his campaign and his ideas. So we had no other choice but to go to these independent platforms and try to get his message out there. And so he and his followers, the mainstream media had nothing to do with building him. And I think they just can't stand that. Because if you have your own independent base of support, then they don't have a lot of tools or weapons in their disposal. They don't have that access into your world and ability to get directly into you. And that just really drives them crazy, because his existence and his success in this race is really a sort of, it really kind of is a direct F you to the media of like, we don't need you. You were wholly irrelevant to all of this. And so that's why when I see him continuing to lead in the polls, even though I have some serious issues with the way he's campaigned for mayor, et cetera, I find it really encouraging, because we saw the polar opposite thing in the Democratic primary, where whatever the mainstream media said, Democratic primary voters were like, yes, we'll vote for whoever. But it may be the case that that only really works when you have the unique evil of Donald Trump on the other side of that equation. And outside of that, maybe people kind of think for themselves, or maybe they actively look at this attempt to smear someone that they see as like a generally nice guy who, he's not perfect, he's screwed, like that interaction, it wasn't a great look, et cetera, et cetera. But as you said, anytime someone comes up to you with some weird stuff, it's hard to react in real time other than with nervous laughter and just try to extricate yourself out of a situation like you did. So I think that's why they hate him so much.
That's right.
Next on Rising, friends Andrew Feldman, Marshall Koslov are going to join us for Team Rising. That's after this.